I'm going to miss not being able to ring that bell. That's one of the privileges of being president. That's great. Well, welcome everybody. It's so good to see everybody here today. My name is Paul Hoffman, and I'm the president of the Rotary Club of Madison, and it's great to have such good attendance today. The sun's out, and looks like we're heading towards a little bit of some nicer weather, so nice. We needed that. I want to say thanks to our meeting sponsors today, Jeff Toos, owner of Bright Star Senior Living, and Sean Morrison, who's Regional Director of Operations of Bright Star Care in Madison. So let's say thank you to them. Bright Star provides in-home care and assisted living and medical staffing and employ over 700 CNAs and RNs to provide care. Jeff's been a member of Rotary since 2009 and currently serves on the Madison Rotary Foundation Board of Trustees. And Sean just rejoined our Rotary Club last month. Welcome, Sean, and our thanks for their support. We're going to open up our meeting like we always do, reciting the four-way test of what we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Great, thank you. And please remain standing for our opening patriotic song. Robert Reed will lead us in singing My Country 'Tis of Thee with Casey Elkers on the keyboard. Robert?
My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. Thank you all.
I have double duty to it. Yeah, exactly. You bet.
Rotarians, I actually have double duty today. After singing, I get to introduce the guests for today. So when I introduce your name or the guests, if you could please stand and remain standing, and we'll show our appreciation at the end. We have everybody's attention now, so we'll make sure we welcome our guests here. First guest is Tom Bush, who is a guest of Valerie Rank. We have Brandon Clote, who's a guest of Victor Rodriguez. We have Lisa Coleman, who's a guest of Michael Muka. We have Jovan Deming, who's a guest of Mark Westover. We have Fred Elder, who's a guest of Larry Larrabee. Andrew Klein, who's a guest of Jason Ilstrup. We have Greg Morris, who's also a guest of Larry Larrabee. We have Barry Stoner, who's a guest of Dory Hosek. We have Carolyn Sullivan, who's a guest of Connor Moran. And Andreas Trevino, which is a guest of Rick Leffler. Would you all welcome all of our guests? Thank you.
Welcome to all of our guests. Nice to have you here today. And thank you, Robert. Singing, introducing our guests. What else can we have you do? We just need to get you signed up for more things, Robert. The speaker. That's awesome. Thanks, Robert. All right. Well, the number I'd like to highlight today is number 12. And that number represents the number of our members who attended the 2023 Rotary Tri-Con in La Crosse last weekend. And no, it didn't get washed away by the flooding up there, but it was close. This was a conference of 3 different Rotary districts, and the breakout sessions and speakers were outstanding. Michelle McGrath was recognized as incoming governor of our Rotary District 6250. All right. We're looking forward to having her ceremony at the end of this month, end of June, so here at our own club. And Tressa Holmes was elected to our district's board. Congratulations, Tressa, on that. And Jason Barron's going to be chairing our next year's Tricon planning team, and that takes place up in Green Bay. So next year, I'm sure he's going to be looking forward to having many of our Rotarians attend with him up at the Tricon next year. So our thanks to our Rotarians for participating in this year's conference, and to Michelle, Jason, and Teresa for stepping into these new leadership roles in Rotary. I'm pleased to announce that we've got 4 new members today. And I'm going to ask them to please stand as I introduce them. And so will Nicole Bice please stand with her sponsor, Bob Sorge. Nicole has been loaned the classification of foundations and is Executive Director for the Hovde Foundation. She also serves as Executive Director of the SunWest Bank Charitable Foundation. She is originally from Ripon, Wisconsin, and now makes her home with her partner, Andrew Felt, on Shooting Star Trail in McFarland. They have 1 daughter. Nicole holds a bachelor's degree in Spanish and psychology from Lawrence University and an MBA degree from UW-Madison. She has served on local and international boards and is co-founder of Renewal Philanthropy, a collaboration among funders whose aim it is to combat injustice by supporting survivor-driven change. Spending time with her family, reading, playing board games, hiking, and traveling are among her favorite pastimes. Welcome, Nicole. So please remain standing. And will Ted Billich please stand with his sponsor, Valerie Rank. Ted has been loaned the classification of Business Services, Supplies and Technology, and is founder and chief executive officer for Risk Alternatives, LLC, a company that helps nonprofits become more resilient using risk management and process improvement tools. He was born in Royal Oak, Michigan. Ted and his wife Jenny live on Daffodil Lane in Madison, and he has 1 adult child. He holds a bachelor's degree from Wake Forest University and a JD degree from Harvard Law School. Ted is a member of the American Law Institute and serves as a member consultative group for its current project on principles of the law, compliance, enforcement, and risk management. Ted enjoys reading, whittling, drawing, golf, and gardening. Welcome, Ted. And will Kai Gardner-Mishlev please stand with her sponsor, Ron Luskin. Kai has been loaned the classification of Community Services and is Executive Director for Jewish Social Services of Madison, Inc., and the first person of color to lead the organization. She was a member of the Milwaukee Amigos Rotary Club from 2021 to 2022. She was born in Chicago and came to Madison last year. Kai makes her home on South Ridge Way in Middleton, and she has 3 adult children. She holds a bachelor's degree from Boston University and is the founder of the Asian American Pacific Islander Jewish Alliance in Milwaukee. She has been named a 4th cohort of the Illuminate Jewish Women's Foundation of New York Collective and is a recipient of the 2022 Women of Faith Award by the Salvadorian Sisters. Her community service activities include various projects in different communities, one of which is the Tables Across Borders project. Kai enjoys biking, hiking, gardening, and art. Welcome, Kai. And will Peng Her and his sponsor, Tom Pop, please stand. Thank you, Tom. Peng has been loaned the classification of Community Services and is CEO for the Hmong Institute, Incorporated. He was born in Longcheng, Laos. Peng and his wife, Mai Zhong Ryu, make their home on Arapahoe Lane in Madison and have 3 adult children. Peng earned a bachelor's degree in physics from Central College and continued his studies in physics at DePaul University, where he earned his master's degree. He is a recipient of the 2015 City County MLK Humanitarian Award, and Peng has served on Governor Tony Evers' Early Childhood Advisory Council and on the UW-Madison Chancellor's Community Advisory Council. He is a current board member for Access Community Health Centers, and he enjoys hiking, camping, and fishing. Please join me in welcoming our new members and thanking their sponsors. fantastic, and welcome to all of them to our club. What an incredible group and great accomplishments for all. We're excited to have you as members. Thank you. All right, it's May, and that means it's time for our annual Rotary International Foundation Fund Drive. And Linda O'Hearn chairs this year's fund drive, and she'll come up and kick off this year's campaign. Linda, welcome to the podium.
Good afternoon, I think. Yeah, there we go. I have been a Rotarian since 1992. I'm proud to be this year's chair of the Rotary International Foundation Fund Drive. I joined our Rotary Club for a lot of good reasons, just like you, but I was amazed to discover that all the good in the world that Rotary does. I saw that good work up close and personal in Nigeria when I was a group study exchange team leader, and in Ghana working on the Change Her Story project. I urge you to donate to the RI Foundation during this spring campaign for all the good work that Rotary does, that your club does. During this month, you'll hear stories and pleas to give. So I suggest you make your contribution early, so you feel good about contributing to support all the needs around the world that Rotary works to address. I'm starting today with how Rotary is helping children from war-torn Ukraine. Here are some excerpts from Healing Scars of War, produced by Monika Lazinska and written by Julia Mendel. In the mountains of Poland, children traumatized by violence get a chance to be kids again at a Rotary camp. Beneath the emotional scars of living in the Ukrainian war zone, Mikita flashes the smile that the mischievousness of any other 12-year-old boy headed to camp. He wants to laugh, play pranks, and on the last night of camp, we will cover everyone in toothpaste, he says excitedly. Each camper has a parent or a sibling killed or injured in the fighting in Ukraine. Psychologists at camp will guide them along their way during an itinerary that mixes escape and therapy. When asked about their families, the children often talk about their parents, their siblings, their grandparents, and even their pets. Then the looks in their eyes change. Glints of childish fun disappear, and instead there's obvious pain behind their faces and silence. Valerie, 12, was slow to trust others. Her answers were often short and sharp. Her father was injured in combat while her pregnant mother was home caring for the family. Valerie shrank into herself, stopped communicating with peers, and started sleeping in her father's sleeping bag on the balcony. That was the most difficult year of my life, she said. She was asked to close her eyes and remember the most pleasant memory of camp in an effort to make her smile for a photo. Eyes closed, Valerie started crying and opened up in a way that she had previously not done at camp. I am disturbed about my dad, as he is stressed for Mom, and he is forbidden to have stress, as he can have a heart attack. Valerie dreams of following her father's path and becoming a military officer. Like many children, 11-year-old Dima doesn't want to talk about his dad's death. Talking about death makes it all too real. Dima, though, shared a glimpse of the stress of his family. He explained that since their mother left to join the fighting, his 18-year-old brother was turning to smoking and drinking alcohol. Sometimes he does things that no one can be proud of, Dima said. Children are more vulnerable to the psychological trauma of war, often causing them to withdraw, experts say. Reestablishing emotional connections is critical to healing. If left untreated, isolated children are more likely to experience domestic violence, addiction, and job loss later in life. That's what research shows. When a breakthrough comes, the therapists listen or just sit quietly as the tears flow. It always takes time to survive loss. This time is needed to run the process that we name grief work. Olga Maivska, a member of the Rotary Club of Kharkiv Multinational in Ukraine, has brought children to the camp for 2 years and has witnessed its impact. After the trip, they are more willing to make contact and open their hearts, she said. A person will always remember the loss of someone whom he or she loved. The task is not to forget, but to find the essence of this loss and to learn how to be happy after that. Please make your contribution today to help these children and many others have a future. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Linda, and thanks for your work on this campaign. It's always great to hear the stories. I'm sure we have many more to come for the coming weeks, so thank you, Linda. And I'd like to welcome up Ron Luskin, who's our co-chair of our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee, and he's got an announcement for us today. Welcome, Ron.
I'm going to go off script for just 30 seconds. Fred, I'm glad to see you here in the audience today. I appreciate the fact that your father, Frederick Mose Sr., invented the surgical procedure, the Mose surgical procedure. That's the deal with my face today. I looked worse a couple days ago, as some people know, and hopefully the bandages will be removed in a few days. Thank you, Fred. Well, I'm here today to talk about an initiative of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, Black History Walking Tour. This has been arranged by fellow Rotarians Angela Titus and Peter Gray, so thank you very much. It's going to occur 2 weeks from today on May 17th. That'll be immediately following the luncheon program. A few details about the walking tour. It'll be about 3/4 of a mile, so you need to be sure that you got good shoes and you feel comfortable walking that distance, a 3/4 mile, away from the Capitol Square towards the near east side. The tour is going to be led by a Wisconsin Historical Society tour guide who will take us to several notable spots of interest that represent Madison's Black history. This is a private event just for our Rotarians and for members of our club. Again, it's going to be Wednesday, the 17th of May. Immediately following the adjournment of our luncheon meeting, people will gather down in the lobby, and as people come together, they'll depart. The walking tour is going to take you out to that far east side to about 2:30. You need to be comfortable walking back, which should take you perhaps only about 20 minutes. There will be gratis from Park Hotel. There'll be a bus for people who may have mobility issues, but please only sign up for that bus if you do indeed have mobility issues. You'll find a sign-up sheet on your table. Otherwise, it'll be publicized probably this coming Friday, and it may be mentioned at the podium again next week. Thank you very much, and I hope you'll partake.
Thank you, Ron, and thanks to the DI committee for helping put this together. I hope we get a lot of people participate in that. Okay, we have birthdays to celebrate with a bit of humor or wisdom that complements Rotary's mission. We also encourage members to make a gift to our foundation's Community Grants Endowment Fund that represents their age, rounded up to 100 for our Synergy Scholarship Fund. On April 30th, Jeannie Engelhart. On May 2nd, Mary Donahue, who chaired our fund drive this year, shares, "The only birthday wish I have is to close out the annual fund drive successfully this year." She could still dress up in costume, people. All right, come on. And we are still about $11,403 from meeting our goal for the Rotary year. And your gift or additional gift to help us reach our goal before June 30th would make all of her birthday wishes come true. Let's help do that for Mary. Thank you, Mary. May 2nd, Rich Leffler. May 3rd, Dick Lovell. And May 5th, Janet Perino. Thanks to all of our celebrants for their contributions to the Madison Rotary Foundation, and please join me in wishing them a happy birthday. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday, dear Rotarians, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, and thank you, Casey. All right, we've got a couple members that are in the news and some news to share. First, I want to mention that Margaret Murphy's husband, Howard Kidd, passed away on May 1st. Our condolences go out to Margaret and her family. And Bobby Slatke's father, George Slatke, passed away on April 20th, and we extend our condolences to Margaret and to Bobby and to their families. Moses Alsteck was pictured and quoted in an In Business magazine cover story titled, "Run Your Business Like a Circus and Become Your Own Ringmaster." Justin Hart was also pictured and quoted in the article, May 23rd. Aurelia Estrada was pictured in the La Comunicad news article about our Rotary Youth Awards luncheon, and Mike Wilson was also mentioned in that article. All right. Last October, Dr. Ian Robertson, Dean of the UW College of Engineering, talked with us about the need for more engineers in our state. Today, he returns to our podium to talk with us about the future of hydrogen fuel. Dean Robertson received a bachelor's in applied physics from Strathclyde University in Glasgow, Scotland, and a doctor of metallurgy from the University of Oxford in Oxford, England. He is formerly the Donald B. Willett Professor of Engineering at the University of Illinois and Director of the National Science Foundation Division of Materials Research. His insight into the mechanisms responsible for hydrogen embrittlement of metals was recognized by the Department of Energy in 1984 when he received their prize for outstanding scientific accomplishment in metallurgy and ceramics. He is author of more than 240 research publications on material science topics and was named Fellow of ASM International in 2009. We look forward to your presentation, Dean Robertson, and we have made a contribution to the Rotary International Polio Plus Fund as a way to say thanks for speaking with us today. I also want to mention that we'll have Q&A with our speaker at the end as time allows, but please wait for the microphone if you've got a question. And let's welcome the College of Engineering, Dean Ian Robertson, to our podium. Thank you.
So it is a real pleasure for me to be back here, so thank you for the invitation to come back. As Paul mentioned, the last time I was here was to tell you about the need for the UW-Madison's College of Engineering to grow because we need to produce more engineers to meet the state's demand. What I'm going to do today is tell you one of the areas that is going to require more engineers. It's not only going to require more engineers, it's going to require that all of us learn how to operate differently. So we are going to talk about introducing hydrogen into our world. And yes, I know, everyone's picture of using hydrogen is of big ships blowing up. And so there is some concern about moving there. And if you've watched some recent movies, you'll see that the whole island blew up because they were going to hydrogen. I'm here to tell you that I think we can actually make it work, and we can actually transition and bring hydrogen in as part of our economic growth. It's going to play a role in how we drive our cars, how we fly on planes, how we heat our homes, how we produce chemicals. I'm going to show you some of that, and I'll tell you some of the reasons why. I'll show you where, I didn't realize this until I started making these talks, that hydrogen actually has colors. I always thought it was a gas, but apparently it has a spectrum of colors, and I'll show you that spectrum. And then I'll show you some of the examples. I will start by saying that the US is behind in adopting. Still didn't go over. We tested this earlier to make sure it worked too. Now, so I want to tell you a little bit about why it's important for us to move towards a hydrogen economy, or at least introduce it as part of our clean energy technologies that we're going to bring in. So what you'll see on the screen now is the greenhouse gas emissions by economic sector. And if you listen to what the state is saying, what the nation is saying, we are all saying that by 2030, we are going to reduce the emissions by 50%, right? We're going to actually cut the emissions by 2030. 2030. By 2050, we're going to go to zero greenhouse gas emissions in the state of Wisconsin and across the world. It's a major challenge. So let's look at the sectors that actually are responsible for most of those emissions. And you're going to recognize them because they impact you. Transportation, right? Transportation counts for 27% of the emissions. If we look at how we produce electricity, you see that's also another 25, 26%. If you think how all of our industries, how we make steel, it's a big contributor as well. How we make chemicals, it's a big contributor. These are all running 24, 25%. If we look at commercial and residential, you'll see that's another significant percentage. Agriculture is 11%. Every one of those sectors touches us. And we're going to have to figure out how to decarbonize them. And hydrogen is going to play a role in it. Have the next slide, please. So if we look at where we are today, this graph, hopefully you can see it. The blue line actually says how we're heading today and what the projections are for the future. You'll also see, if you can see, the difference between the red and the orange. The red is where we will go with current policies that we currently have. The orange says, here is what the Inflation Reduction Act will do. The dotted line says, this is what we need to get to if we're going to meet our targets. You'll notice there's a big gap. We're nowhere close. What we're going to have to require us to do is to bring in new technologies, new capabilities, in order to enable us to close that gap. And really, if we're thinking 25, 30 years time frame, that's short. Right? We are going to have to move rather quickly if we're going to get close to these targets. So this is one of the challenges that we face. Have the next one, please. So the next one is just going to show you how we produce electricity today across the US. And if you look at this, you'll see that most of the energy we produce is by coal and natural gas. We are going to, and we're already starting to move in this direction, of closing down coal-fired plants. The challenge is going to be is that if we want renewables to take up that, renewables today account for 20% of all of the energy we consume in the US. Just think of that challenge, how we're going to go from 20% to close to 100%. It's enormous. If you look at the breakdown of how we actually produce that renewable energy, most of it's wind or hydroelectric. Those are the two biggest contributors. Right? If you look at solar, it's actually a rather small percentage. It's only 14%. If you look at biomass, it's only 7%. Geothermal is 2%. We're going to have to increase all of those. Now, of course, if we go with winds, if we go with any of the renewables, so wind, solar, even hydroelectric, it doesn't always sort of generate electricity when we need it. So we're going to have to ways of storing it. And that's one of the things that we're going to have to figure out. Is it batteries that we're going to use? I mean, that's one option. Is it going to be in molten salt baths? Is another option we have. Or are you going to convert it to hydrogen? Is another option that we have. So what the US is doing today, it's launched what they call 6 Earth shots in different areas that will help us move towards clean energy and also will help reduce our carbon footprint. Those 6 Earth shots are hydrogen, long-term energy storage, right? You can't have your batteries decaying out and losing your energy. You need to be able to store it for a long period of time. CO2 reductions, not just reducing it and storing it, but how do you actually reuse the CO2? We don't just want to pump it into an underground storage because, yeah, that's got some issues with it as well, and it's going to leak, so we don't want to really do that. We need another way to use it back up. We're also going to look at geothermal, offshore wind, and we're also going to look at all of the industries. Just think of all of the manufacturing bases that we have in Wisconsin. We're going to have to help all of those industries become carbon neutral. We do not want to have a case where all of our industries in Wisconsin are buying carbon credits. Now, if you want carbon credits, it would be good for you because we're all going to have to buy them somehow, so the price is going to go way up. But our goal is to make sure the state of Wisconsin has the energy, and it's clean energy, so they do not have to buy those carbon credits. Those are the 6 earth shots that we're working towards. The one I'm going to tell you about today is hydrogen. So if I could have the next slide. So hydrogen, what does the Department of Energy want us to do? They want us to get the price of producing 1 kilogram of hydrogen to $1, and for us to do that within a decade. That is it's a big ask, right? I mean, I've worked in this field for 40 years, and I can tell you that's a major challenge for us to try and do. So it's an 80% reduction in the cost of hydrogen. 80% reduction. Now, if we're able to do it, it has enormous benefits to us. So if we can actually produce 10 million metric tons of hydrogen, we could actually double today's solar and wind. Because now we have a system of storing it so that when you need to use it, it's there. Right? That would be immense. To give you an idea, 10 million metric tons is roughly what we produce today. So another 10 million gives us doubling of solar and wind. Be a major breakthrough for us. If you actually think of what's this going to do for the economy of the US, it's estimated that it's 140 billion as an industry. They're saying that they're going to have 700,000 jobs to drive that industry. A lot of them are going to be engineers. We're going to have to retrain an awful lot of people because they're going to be working in a different capacity. All of our welders will need to retrain them because welding for hydrogen is very different than welding for a pipeline. Very, very different technology. If you're asking how much would this do in terms of to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, so if we produce 6 gigatons, so that's 6 times 10 to the 9, which is a lot, right? It's an awful lot. If we could do that by 2050, we'd actually get a 20% reduction that we need to do. What would this do for temperature rise? 2 degrees. 20% of the 2-degree requirement. That's a challenge. But it's something we need to do as a nation. So let me turn to the hydrogen spectrum and tell you what we mean by why a gas has color. Right, so if I could have the next slide. So the color is all to do with how we produce it. And hopefully you can see some of these colors. And I'm going to give them the wrong colors because it's kind of hard to see up there and my color scheme isn't projecting that well. But there's 2 right at the very bottom. One is supposed to be gold. It's called natural hydrogen. There's one next to it also called natural hydrogen that's orange. It turns out across the US and throughout the world, there are natural sources of hydrogen. We actually didn't really pay much attention to them for centuries. They were just there. But there are natural places that will emit hydrogen as a gas. We need to figure out how to tap into them and keep replenishing them. So the gold is pure natural hydrogen. The orange, well, we're going to pump water into those areas to increase the production. So that's the orange. Okay, gray, well, that's if you take a fossil fuel and you make hydrogen. Now, if you actually use the hydrocarbon pyrolysis, you get turquoise hydrogen. If you actually capture the CO2, you get what we call blue hydrogen. Okay, it's very complicated to keep them all straight. If you can actually use a renewable energy source to make the hydrogen, it's called green hydrogen. So this would be water splitting, it would be biomass. This would give us green hydrogen, which is where we all want to go. If you use nuclear power, you get pink hydrogen. So this is the hydrogen spectrum that we're going to use. Now, if you ask, where are we today? We produce gray hydrogen. That's what we produce today. It's not where we have to be in the future if we want to produce clean hydrogen and green hydrogen. Remember, if it's gray, if you don't capture the CO2, you're releasing the CO2, so it really doesn't help you. Right, so we have to change how we're going to produce it. So if I could have the next slide, we'll look at what's hydrogen going to do for us. So if you look at hydrogen, how we could generate it, think of all of the ways that we produce electricity, whether it's renewable, whether it's coal, whether it's nuclear, it goes into the grid. You can then use that electricity to split water. That's one way that we could actually make hydrogen. So that's one path that we could use. How could we then figure out what we're going to use with it? Well, it's going to impact transportation. You will be driving hydrogen-powered vehicles in the future. Your Amazon parcels, they will be delivered in Amazon-powered vehicles. You'll fly in planes powered by hydrogen. There's already companies making hydrogen-powered planes. You will fly in them. If you think about synthetic fuels, oil, upgrading the oil, we will do that by adding hydrogen into the mix that we use. Fertilizers, right? We're certainly going to make more fertilizers. We're going to need it because we need it for the food production. So hydrogen is going to be used to help with the ammonia production. Metals production, remember those production of metals, particularly steel, very intensive CO2 emitters. It's about 7% emission of the CO2 total coming from steel production. We will, and we are, making CO2-free steel. It's just phenomenal that we can actually do it. If you think of chemical production, we're going to change how we produce chemicals going forward. Hydrogen will play a really big part in it. You are going to use it in your homes to heat and power your home. I think that's just amazing that we could actually think of doing that. Our challenges are going to be, how do we produce the hydrogen and how do we deliver it to the end user? Now, we could all have our own electrolyzers, which is going to just take the water and split it into hydrogen and oxygen. We could do that and have every one of our homes, but we're probably not going to do that. That's an awful lot of electrolyzers. So we're probably going to have to figure out local production sites versus sites that are next to solar farms. But if it's next to a solar farm, how do you get it to you? I will tell you, because I've studied this area for a long time, I wouldn't pump it through the natural gas pipeline system, right? At least not in high quantities. I mean, 5-10% is probably okay. Anything above that, I'd worry, right? And the reason is the metals will fail, and that's not a good thing for hydrogen. But we are going to use it, and it's going to become parts of the things that we see in industries and in our homes. So I want to show you just where the rest of the world is and some of the things they've done. So if I could have the next slide. So who would have ever thought that they were going to produce one of those heavy blue trucks? So this is a mining truck. This mining truck has better power, better torque, more weight carrying capacity than a diesel truck. If you talk to manufacturers of these today, they want to go to a system that will be fueled by either hydrogen, diesel, or battery. And it will just depend on your location, where you are, what the source is, how it's going to be powered. That's amazing when you think of all the earth-moving equipment we have. It could be powered by any of those methods. If you want, you could go buy a hydrogen-powered Toyota. They exist today. You'll never tell you're driving in anything different than your normal car. They ride just the same. Ferry boats. So the Japanese already have ferries that are powered by hydrogen. Steel is the center one on the bottom. That is an ingot of steel that's going to go into Volvo cars. No CO2 emission. Purely powered by hydrogen. And then the last one in the lower right is one of the aircraft. This is just a small one, but they are looking at ones that we will fly in, right? The 300-seat planes, powered by hydrogen. Have the next slide. What's coming to us, and you'll already find it in Europe and in Asia, are hydrogen stations. If you think of Quick Trip, what their station is going to look like in the future, right? They're still going to be selling gas, they're going to be selling hydrogen, and they're going to have charging stations for your electric vehicles. It's going to change completely how we actually go to our quick trip station to power our vehicles. But this is coming to us. So the box on the left is actually the electrolyzer. That takes the water. It's powered by a solar panel out the back, multiple solar panels. But it produces the hydrogen on site at the refueling station. That's what's coming to all of us. Now, if you were to go out and buy a hydrogen-powered car today, I'd probably recommend not doing it just yet, unless you're actually going to have your own electrolyzer at home. Because if we go to the next slide, here's where you'll find all of the hydrogen power stations in the US. So there's roughly 45 public accessible hydrogen stations in the US. 43 of them happen to be in California. So Wisconsin, don't go. It's just not good. Don't go buy your hydrogen car today. Well, you could set a new trend, right? I mean, that would also be good. So if I could have the next slide. I mean, hydrogen is obviously something we're going to have to learn how to live with, how to learn how to work with. It is a gas. It does have, if you look at how much volume you need to store it, unless you pressurize it, it's a massive amount of volume. So everything we're going to do is going to be pressurized tanks. The thing in your car and all of the vehicles, it will be a pressurized tank. Now you're going, that doesn't sound so good. I can guarantee you, because I've seen the pressure tests, so I've seen the drop of a hydrogen gas tank from a high height onto a pointed object. The gas tank survived. So I think the crash test worthiness is as good as the ones in our vehicles today. So I would say that part's safe. It is flammable. It's got fairly easy to ignite, which is a problem. And actually, you'll notice that the pictures there, this was a commercial fueling station. And because of a spark, it exploded. Now, the damage was seen something like a 200-meter radius from the station. The windows in the surrounding buildings all needed new windows. So hydrogen is dangerous. We are going to have to learn how to work with it, because it is going to be part of the mix of how we power the future. But I think we can do it. We have the right kind of technology to do it. So I think we should be. That's probably telling me I'm about done, right? So let me tell you where we are in Wisconsin in this. So if I could have the next slide. So the governor has signed on with 2 national initiatives. One is the Heartland Hydrogen Hub, and the other one is the Midwestern Hydrogen Coalition. These are 2 activities that will go after $7 billion in federal funding to deploy hydrogen. You are going to see hydrogen stations in Wisconsin. You're going to hear about hydrogen production because of these investments. The universities are going to be working to lower that cost, because at the moment it's about, $16 per kilogram of hydrogen. It needs to get down to a commercial price of about $3 or $4 per gallon or per kilogram, and we'll get there. So I want to finish with a picture that I just found recently about natural hydrogen. I just thought the picture was so nice. If I could have the last slide, please. This is how you find where the natural hydrogen is. You look for these little circles. Of course, you need LiDAR in order to take the image, but this is actually just an image of how they're picking up natural sources of hydrogen. So the circles you see, the ovals you see, are all natural hydrogen deposits. This one happens to reside in the US. So just think of putting a pump on top of that, and we will take that out of the ground, and we will then deploy it in all of our industries. It's coming. I think it's actually incredibly exciting as a new technology. We are behind, but I'm confident that we're going to catch up and we'll deploy this technology. We'll all see it coming. So I think that's kind of exciting and kind of fun. So thank you again for your attention, and thank you for inviting me.
Please remember to mention your name.
Regina Milner, and thank you very much. This is a much-needed topic for us to understand. Would you elaborate just a bit more about the spread between what's happening in Europe and Asia and the United States with regard to hydrogen?
Yeah, so for many years I was involved with an institute in Japan, massive amount of research funding, and this was 15 years ago. They've already figured out how to put hydrogen at your home. Right, they have figured out how they're going to store hydrogen locally. It's going to be in a box that looks like your air conditioner, and that's where the hydrogen is stored. And then when you need it, it comes off the box, and you can use it in your house. They've already got the cars. They've already got the stations. They're further ahead than us in electrolyzers. So I think, Regina, we've a lot to pick up on or catch up on. When I think of what we do in catalysis work, not just here at the university, but across the nation, catalysis is going to be critical to lower the cost of splitting water. I think that's where we'll actually catch up on them. We'll be able to produce it much larger quantities, much cheaper. But we've a long way to go.
Thank you very much for your talk, Mr. Robertson. One of the things that was interesting to me is that among the Earth shots was not nuclear fuel or better nuclear production. And it's also interesting to me that we have private foundations doing work in that area, but it wasn't part of the Earth shots. And I'm curious to understand that.
Well, I don't work for DOE, so I didn't set the Earth shots. But let's say that clean energy production is part of their mix, right? It's not called out of one of the Earth shots. So if you're thinking of fission and fusion, they're both they would push them towards being part of the clean energy mix. Some of us would say, well, they're not really clean because you've got all of the waste to deal with, but DOE would look at it as being part of that technology. I should tell you, though, something I'm really proud of, just out of UW-Madison, actually, is 2 fusion companies. Right? I mean, I think it's just spectacular that 2 of them come out within 6 months of each other. I think it's spectacular. Are you going to be getting fusion energy anytime soon? No, but they keep telling me it's closer. And I think given the private investment we're seeing in that technology, you have to believe that there's something there and they're pretty close. So I'm very excited about our contribution to producing energy through fission and fusion. Right here.
Hi, Nick Tippett says, we're hearing a lot about AI. How does that work? I'm sure you're talking about it.
In terms of what we're doing in energy? So one clearly is grid security, right? Or optimization of the grid. We need to figure out how to do that. How do you actually bring the new renewables into the normal grid supply? So that is where we use a lot of AI to actually tell us what the distribution is, what the need is. If you're thinking of some of the new catalysis materials that we have, we actually use AI to guide us with the selection of those new materials that we then make. If we're thinking of materials that are tolerant to hydrogen, I mean, I've tested a lot of metals that are supposed to be tolerant to hydrogen. None of them really are. So just to give you an idea, I mean, everybody's bent a paperclip back and forth, right? And it goes back and forth quite a few times before it will break. I could guarantee you'll only bend it once if I put hydrogen in it, and then it will fail. Hydrogen is that detrimental to a metal. One of the fueling stations in Japan had the pipe that went from the main storage to the car failed because of hydrogen. And I have to tell you, all of us who work in the field would have picked that same metal to be the pipe. It says we don't understand enough about it. Can I make a hydrogen-tolerant material? Yes. Can we afford it? No. So I can make it, but you can't put it into mass production. It would just be too expensive. But we use AI to help guide us to what those materials should be. So AI plays a huge part in how we actually are trying to accelerate how quickly we advance the science.
Okay, we have one more question here.
Dr. Robertson, thank you so much. My name's Ted Billich. This was literally a thrilling presentation for a lot of us, I think. What would it be that would make you 2, 3, 4 years from now say, we are on track? What's the headline that we should be looking for to feel comfortable that we might make it on this Earth shot?
Oh, wow. Any other questions are much easier? That's why those ones where I need that sort of crystal ball. I think it's, there's got to be a big challenge for us, right? So it's not going to be people like me coming up with a new material, either for making the electrolyzers cheaper. That's only going to be part of it. It's to take to all of you and say, are you willing to try this technology? Because everyone's picture and memory of hydrogen is the Hindenburg, right? And there are pictures of gas stations blowing up. So if people look at it, they're going to go, not near me. So how do we overcome that? So part of the thing I think we need to do is an educational initiative. And that's why I like coming out to things like this, to say yes, it is a new technology. Yeah, that's a little bit scary. It's new, it's different. But just think of what we did when we first started with gas-powered cars. And now we just accept them, right? But there's still gas stations blowing up. But we don't make a big deal of them. So it's a new technology we have to learn to work with. So to me, the biggest thing, the biggest challenge we're going to have, and the one we need to address, is educating all of you that this is a technology we need, and we need to get it introduced. We'll give you the technology solution. That part, I think, that part I'm not worried about. It's more, will we accept it?
Paul, do we have time for one more?
We do. One quick one.
Hi, Linda O'Hearn. How does the political environment in this country affect hydrogen development?
I thought the last question was bad. We're out of time, right, Paul?
Yes. Look at that. Here we go.
That's right. Well, I think as we talk about education, the other part that's going to be absolutely critical is what are all the states going to do to say that we are going to move in this, we are going to invest in it, and we are going to look at policies and regulations that will make this a permissible technology. But if I look around the state of Wisconsin, I think, who could this impact? Trucking, shipping, right? If you just look at, I won't mention any companies in case I picked the wrong one, but everybody knows the big trucking companies, they're going to go to hydrogen, they have to. Shipping is going to go the same way. If you think of the people that deliver our gas stations today, they're going to have to rethink completely. But they're going to need the federal government, the state governments to step up and go, we're going to do this, right? We've got a big initiative to put charging stations along the major highways. We're going to have to come back and say, we need to put hydrogen charging stations along those major trucking routes so that we can actually go and fuel it. So it is going to make change. And again, part of my job is to educate people about, we can do this. We have to do it, and we have to find solutions. Will we make mistakes along the way? Sure. But I think we're going to need help from the political side, the educational side, to make it work. But it was a good question.
Dean Robertson, thank you very much. It's welcome back to our club. It's fantastic to have you here and sharing today's talk with us. This was incredible. This is what I think the Rotary Club of Madison can help bring to our members, right? Is speakers like Dean Robertson and and the future, talking about what we're going to all be doing. So it's fantastic to have you here. We really appreciate it. And good luck trying to get that new engineering school. We appreciate that. I think that should be called the Scott Shot, right? Or something. Right? Let's hope we get that. I think Dean Robertson said he had 8,500 applications for the engineering school. And how many can you accept out of that 8,500? About 1,100. So 8,500 applications for one of the top engineering schools in the world, and they can only accept 1,100. So good luck with that. I hope that that goes well. All right. And I want to try something different a little bit here, just to find out if you guys could give me your preference of this. So on June 21st, we're having a talk on presentation on bees and pollination. And because the hotel had a conflict, and so we thought about moving our meeting out to Olbrich Gardens and try to attach our program with Olbrich Gardens. It should be a fantastic time of the year. June 21st, the garden should be in full bloom. It should be incredible. And so we've talked about, do we move that out there? We're going to have to move probably someplace because there's a conflict, at least at this point. And so we're thinking about, would we do that? So I was wondering if we could get just a show of hands. And I understand there's no commitment, but would you guys be willing to go to Olbrich for that, or would you rather stay downtown? So it looks like that's, okay, great. So if we can get that to happen, there's a little bit of construction there, so there's some challenge, but so that was one of our concerns too. But the gardens should be really fantastic at that time, and we have an incredible program for that. So Pat, we'll see if we can make that work, I guess. Let's go. So thank you for that. Try something a little new. And with that, I hope that you'll join us next week when we're going to hear from Angela Titus. She's the Assistant Deputy Director and Chief Program Officer for the Wisconsin Historical Society. And she's going to tell us about 10 inspiring people from Wisconsin history. I know that that's going to be excellent. So I hope that you join us next week. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.